there will come a time, I think, where I will just do everything and then I think I'll leave.
Belle Delphine is one of the only people in internet history who built an entire career out of pure disorder. Not talent, not conventional beauty, not even consistency. Disorder. Every time she resurfaced, she didn't just trend, she hijacked the entire public conversation and bent the algorithm to her will. This is the same girl who convinced grown adults to spend real money on jars of her bathwater.
Drink the bathwater. I'm going to die. This will be my last video.
The same girl who staged a viral kidnapping photo shoot that had tabloids arguing over whether it was social commentary or just shock bait. The same girl who faked a mugshot so convincingly that mainstream news sites covered it as if she had actually been arrested. The same girl who dropped a Christmas corn release that broke the internet, earned her millions in hours, and then vanished immediately afterward like it was all part of a master plan. She made trolling an art form. She built a brand on subverting expectations. And the craziest part is that none of this was accidental. People like to paint her as a random weird girl who got lucky, but when you study her timeline closely, it becomes obvious that she was always 10 steps ahead. She understood scarcity. She understood parasocial desire. She understood the algorithm better than the platforms that hosted her. Even her disappearances were strategic. She would vanish right after her biggest stunts, letting the mystery inflate her value. Then she'd come back in something even more explosive. But the story doesn't start with the bathwater like a lot of people believe. The real story goes all the way back to a kid from South Africa. Belle Delphine was born on October 23, 1999 in Cape Town, South Africa, a place she remembers as both beautiful and unsafe. Her earliest memories are a mix of sunshine and tension. She grew up in a house with bars on the windows because break-ins were common. Even as a child, she understood that danger was part of the environment, something you learn to navigate rather than avoid. Her parents met during a photo shoot. Her mother, a British woman with a calmer temperament, crossed paths with her father, who worked in film. Their relationship moved quickly, pushed forward by visa complications that forced them into a rushed marriage. It wasn't the kind of romantic origin story people expect when they look at the later, hyper-curated persona Belle became known for. It was more of a practical arrangement layered with stress from the beginning. That stress never really went away. Belle's mother came from a conservative religious family, which created an odd split in the household dynamic. The larger family held traditional, strict beliefs, but her mother herself was unusually permissive and open-minded. Belle grew up caught between those two worlds. The strictness of the extended family on one side and the more flexible, free-range parenting of her mother on the other. This contradiction shaped her later in life, where she became comfortable pushing boundaries because the person who raised her never punished curiosity. Her father was the opposite. Belle has described him as emotionally distant and at times physically aggressive. She remembers a household where tension was always humming beneath the surface.
He's just a huge asshole, and he was always very no jokes, so sick.
The kind of atmosphere where a wrong move or a loud noise could shift the mood instantly. Those early memories stick with her the most. Not specific scenes, but a general heaviness. A feeling of living around someone who demanded control.
Their relationship was really rough. They fought a lot. And I think growing up around violence a lot was really I don't know, it's kind of strange.
Eventually, the marriage fell apart. Her parents separated, and Belle moved to the United Kingdom with her mother. That transition pulled her out of the instability of South Africa and into an entirely new country, culture, and pace of life. But even in the UK, the emotional distance from her father followed her. He stayed behind, and she learned very early how to move forward without relying on him. It was one of the first signs of the independence that would define her teenage years and her online persona later. Moving to the UK marked the beginning of a completely different kind of struggle for Belle. She arrived around age 11 or 12, thrown into a school system where she felt like an outsider from the moment she walked in. The cultural shift was already overwhelming, but the social environment made it worse. Her attendance quickly became spotty, not because she was lazy, but because she hated being there. She was bullied, singled out, and never really found a place to fit in.
Say my attendance was one of the worst in my class or year or whatever. And whenever I did come into school, people would be like make jokes about it, like, oh, she's finally in, or something like that. And I'd be like, yeah.
Every day at school felt like a reminder that she didn't belong. By her early teens, the bullying had escalated to the point where students sent her harassment messages, targeting everything from her appearance to her personality. Instead of hiding it, she printed the messages out as proof, a physical record of what she was dealing with. But even with that evidence, nothing changed. The school didn't protect her, the environment didn't improve, and eventually she reached her breaking point. Around age 14, she withdrew completely. She just stopped going. And because of gaps in the education system and her mother's permissive parenting style, she slipped through the cracks. She simply disappeared from the classroom, and the system barely noticed. By 15, she was fully out with no path back. Leaving school pushed Belle into the one place where she didn't feel powerless, the internet. She always says that YouTube raised me, and it isn't an exaggeration. With no school to attend and no friends to talk to, she spent 12 to 15 hours a day online. Entire days disappeared into web forums, comment sections, and the chaotic world of early edgy YouTube. She absorbed everything. Filthy Frank, Max Mofo, all the shock humor, subversive skits, and boundary-pushing content that defined that era. These creators were loud, bizarre, unapologetic, and completely free. They were everything she wasn't allowed to be offline. She adopted their humor effortlessly, the darker jokes, the absurdism, the willingness to be strange on purpose. At the same time, she was discovering kawaii aesthetics and anime influences. Soft, pastel, hyper-cute imagery. Combining those two sides created the earliest pieces of what would eventually become the Belle Delphine persona. A pink, sugary surface wrapped around a sense of humor. Most importantly, she finally found validation. Not from classmates, not from teachers, not from a father who was barely present, but from strangers online who liked her jokes, responded to her posts, and made her feel seen. The internet became her escape, her comfort, and eventually her training ground. She learned how attention worked, how communities formed, and how identity could shift based on what people wanted to see. With school out of the picture and home life feeling emotionally disconnected, she gravitated toward people who showed her any kind of attention, even when the age gaps were wildly inappropriate.
Basically, what happened after this was I stayed inside for like several months because I had no friends in real life anymore. So I was like, I made an online community. I didn't make it, I just joined it. And then I managed to make some friends from it, and I went.
By 13, she was already speaking to much older men on the internet. One of them was 25, living in London. She met him through the emo and scene communities that were exploding on social media at the time.
Stay around a friend's house, and then I wouldn't even tell my mom, and then I'd come back the next day and she wouldn't even ask where I was. I remember there was a time where I was 14. This was up when the whole controversy happened or whatever. And I just I found someone on the internet, this guy that I really liked. He was 25 at the time. And I just went on a train, went to see him and stayed with him for like a day. And then I just came back. And then I remember a few months like after that, I was just thinking in my head like, oh, my mom didn't even like ask about that. Like she didn't even like ask where I was or anything.
Her interactions with older men were not harmless. They shaped how she viewed herself and what she had to do to be noticed. She learned early that shock, vulnerability, and intensity could get her the attention she wasn't getting at home or school. By 15, she went as far as moving in with an older boyfriend, leaving behind what little structure she had left. To her, this felt like escape. To anyone observing it now, it's clear she was a teenager in survival mode, trying to anchor herself to anyone who seemed more stable than her real environment.
I just love attention. I'm like Tinkerbell from Peter Pan. I die if I don't get enough.
Even before she officially dropped out, you could see the cracks forming. She would pull stunts at school just to get a reaction, or bring obsessive gifts for people she liked because she didn't know how normal friendships worked.
I was always one of those people that did weird things to get attention at school.
Every gesture was turned up to an extreme. Anything that might make someone look at her even for a moment. All of this was happening while she was spending 12 or more hours a day online, absorbing edgy internet culture and building the early layers of the persona that would one day explode across social media. Those patterns transitioned naturally into content creation. What started as unpolished, artsy photos on Facebook slowly evolved into a more curated online presence. She moved to Instagram in 2015 and began posting stylized photo shoots. YouTube came shortly after in July 2016 when she uploaded early makeup tutorials that were simple but already carried her unique touch. She still looked like a regular girl figuring things out, but bits of her future style were already forming. Gradually, she shifted into the pastel-heavy aesthetic that would later define her. Pink wigs, cat ears, soft lighting, anime influences, and an intentionally exaggerated facial style that blended humor with provocation. She perfected that over-the-top expression that would eventually become her online signature, the one that turned into memes and attracted millions of eyes. It wasn't accidental, it was the outcome of years spent studying what got reactions on the internet. Years learning how to blend innocence with absurdity. Every look, every pose, every expression was part of a developing character that was unlike anything else on mainstream social media, and for the first time, the world was starting to pay attention. Belle's leap into monetizing her online presence was less of a strategic business move and more of a necessity. After leaving school without any GCSEs, she found herself boxed out of most entry-level jobs. Employers didn't want to take chances on someone with no qualifications, and the few places that did hire her only kept her briefly. She worked short stints as a waitress and a barista, but nothing lasted. She wasn't reliable with schedules, she didn't enjoy the work, and she knew she couldn't build any kind of future on minimum wage shifts that drained her energy and gave her nothing in return. So she turned back to the only place where she actually had momentum, the internet. She set up a Patreon and paired it with a premium Snapchat, creating a space where the people who already followed her could pay more for personalized content. She initially framed it as behind-the-scenes access, cute photos, and chat interactions, but as her audience grew, so did the pressure to push boundaries. Patreon became a ladder of escalating rewards. The higher tiers offered more intimacy, culminating in a staggering $2,500 option for one-on-one Skype calls and personalized interactions with her biggest fans. Around the same time, her Instagram began exploding. Her pastel aesthetic, bold expressions, and satirical approach to cosplay caught the algorithm at the perfect moment. Within roughly a month, she gained over 1 million new followers. She had never experienced anything like it. Every post went viral. The attention was overwhelming, but it also showed her that her online persona had real financial potential.
Basically just means cute. So anything sweet looking or colorful, kind of what you imagine when you think of Harajuku, Japan, very bubbly. And that's what I've always been kind of interested in.
That explosion came with new expectations from subscribers. People paying monthly wanted more daring content, more allure, more teasing. Belle felt the pressure and leaned into it. Her posts became more risque, shifting from quirky cosplay into a more suggestive style that blurred the line between humor and desire. She wasn't doing full adult content yet, but she was intentionally nudging her boundaries to keep fans hooked and paying. This period laid the groundwork for her future empire, but it also introduced her to the darker edges of online monetization.
I started following older girls who were doing lewder things, and I just thought that was really cool at the time, and I was still like young at the time, so obviously I didn't do it. I waited until I was 18. And
that darkness showed itself early in her first major scandal. At 17, still young and impressionable, she got involved with an older man who encouraged her to take explicit images he found on Tumblr and resell them as if they were her own. It was a reckless decision driven by inexperience, manipulation, and the belief that no one would notice. But people did. Minty Darling, one of the women whose photos were taken, discovered that her images were being redistributed under Belle's name. Around the same time, other creators came forward as well. The fallout could have ended Belle's career before it even truly began. She contacted Minty privately, apologizing and admitting fault, but she never made a public statement. Part of it was fear, part of it was embarrassment, and part of it was the belief that drawing more attention to the situation would only fuel the fire. As her audience grew, Belle stopped thinking of her online presence as random photo posts and started crafting an actual persona. Everything about it was intentional. She built a character that blended sweetness, strangeness, allure, and secrecy. Cute enough to be approachable, bizarre enough to be memorable, suggestive enough to go viral, and mysterious enough that people couldn't look away. That mixture became the blueprint for Belle Delphine. She leaned into visual extremes to farm reactions. She filmed herself putting a raw egg in her mouth.
Taking cute pictures and stuff, but that's not gonna really do it. So I decided to do weird things in the combination as well as being sexy. And I'll be like cracking an egg in my mouth or something. And then people will share that, be like, this girl's so weird and quirky.
She posed with a dead octopus covered in googly eyes. She made videos that were equal parts absurd and suggestive, designed to make people stop scrolling because they couldn't tell whether it was a joke, a performance, or both. Every stunt felt like bait for curiosity, intentionally crafted to be screenshotted, shared, and argued about. She also understood the power of withholding. Beyond her aesthetic, she gave almost nothing about her real life. No clear details about where she lived, no stories about her family, no vulnerability about her personal relationships. That absence created a vacuum that made people obsess over her mystery. People who had never even heard of Belle were seeing her face in their recommended feed because commentators couldn't stop covering her. Every reaction video, every Who is Belle Delphine essay, every rant about how she's ruining the internet pushed her further into the spotlight. That attention led naturally into one of her boldest phases. At the time, adult platforms were a massive part of internet culture discourse. Belle teased the possibility of joining one of the biggest sites by making a public promise. If one of her Instagram posts reached 1 million likes, she'd make an appearance there. Most influencers throw out these milestones as jokes, but Belle knew her audience would take it seriously. They pushed the post past 1 million and she technically kept her word. She uploaded videos, but every single one was a troll. Explicit-sounding titles paired with absurd, harmless content, like Belle Delphine stroking 2 cocks. Eating food aggressively close to the camera. The thumbnails hinted at adult content, but the videos themselves were nonsense. Her fans felt duped. Some were amused, but many reacted with fury. Feeling tricked, they mass-reported her Instagram page out of spite. Her follower count was exploding, but so was resentment from people who felt she had crossed into full-blown manipulation. But Belle wasn't surprised. She knew the outrage was part of the game. She had spent years learning exactly how far she could push people before they snapped, and she was always ready with the next move. The tension, the disappointment, the anger, all of it fed into the momentum she needed. Because the bigger the emotional reaction, the more explosive the stunt she could pull next. And she had something huge planned. July 2019 becomes the month Belle Delphine stops being just another e-girl and officially transforms into a global internet phenomenon. The stunt is absurdly simple. She bottles her bathwater, which is literally scoops of the water she sat in, and sells each jar for around $30. At first, her own fans think she's joking. Then the product page goes live, and the stock vanishes instantly. Roughly 500 to 600 jars sell out in hours. Not days, hours. Overnight, every mainstream outlet from BBC to Vice is scrambling to write a headline.
Where I got inspiration from it was I knew that Japan has panty vending machines.
How many did you sell?
Oh, I think I only ordered around 500 or 600 things, and it sold out, within a day or 2 days, maybe max.
Even people completely outside internet culture suddenly know the phrase gamer girl bathwater. But with the virality comes the chaos. A fake STD herpes rumor begins circulating on Twitter and Reddit, claiming that lab tests found all kinds of diseases in her bathwater. The rumor spreads fast, even though it's a complete fabrication, a parody post that was mistakenly taken seriously. Belle later explains the whole concept wasn't even supposed to be sexual. She said the idea was inspired by Japanese novelty vending culture, the kind of bizarre collectible gag items you'd find in niche otaku shops or capsule toy machines. Behind the scenes, the stunt backfires financially in ways people rarely talk about. In her excitement, Belle forgets one crucial legal detail: product disclaimers.
I did get into a little bit of a sticky, legal thing, because basically when I sold it, I didn't put any disclaimer on the website and I didn't put any disclaimer on the packaging. So what I had to do was I had to re-email everyone who bought it.
Since she was technically shipping a biological adjacent liquid, payment processors flagged the entire operation as a potential safety hazard. PayPal responds by freezing over $90,000 in her account, not just freezing it, but slapping on fees and penalties. For a while, she can't touch a single dollar of her earnings. Internet pressure builds as fans realize she might genuinely lose the money she made. Memes turn into outrage posts, and outrage posts turn into articles. Eventually, after enough public attention, PayPal reverses the decision. They release her funds, but not before the damage is done. Belle has to refund some buyers, reship missing orders, and cover all the costs herself. For a stunt that looked like a pure cash grab from the outside, the reality is messier. She almost lost everything she made because of technicalities. While still dealing with the backlash from that, not long after, on July 19, 2019, everything flips. Belle's Instagram, which is her biggest platform with millions of followers, and the engine of her entire brand, gets deleted after a coordinated wave of mass reports. No warning, no appeal, just gone. And almost immediately, things spill from online chaos into real-life danger. Her home address leaks. Strangers start showing up outside her door. At one point, she finds a handwritten note taped to it that simply says, "Pay your taxes."
This one time, it was led by these people who were trying to make this movement saying like, oh, sex workers don't pay their taxes or whatever. Let's report all the sex workers to
that was a long time
IRS.
ago. Yeah, I remember.
A person who was a part of this movement came to my house and started regularly visiting it at day, at night, taking photos outside of it. And I only became aware about it because he stuck a piece of paper on my door saying, "Pay your taxes." And my mum found it and she was like...
All of this is happening while the internet is still processing the murder of Bianca Devins, a young e-girl killed by a stalker who followed her online. The timing makes everything feel darker. Belle later explains that it genuinely shook her. Suddenly, the idea of internet fame stopped being funny or ironic and became something you could get hurt for. The fear builds enough that she decides to move homes entirely just to feel safe again. A few months later, in October 2019, she reappears with a totally different kind of chaos. She posts a glossy, pastel-covered mugshot claiming she was arrested for vandalizing a man's car after he stole her hamster. It goes instantly viral. The hair, the bruised eye, the smirk, people meme it, news outlets cover it. Fans treat it like the next chapter in the Belle Delphine cinematic universe. But eventually she admits the whole thing was staged. She literally bought a car, vandalized it herself, took the mugshot photos, and fabricated the entire arrest story just to create buzz. And bizarrely, it worked. The internet ate it up. Then, just as the hype peaks, she disappears. No explanation, no follow-up, just silence, letting the myth grow louder than anything she could actually post. In any other case, this would kill someone's career, but for Belle, it becomes fuel. Her absence triggers a wave of speculation that takes on a life of its own. Then, on June 24th, 2020, she detonated the internet again. She returns with a full music video, a parody of 6ix9ine's comeback style, titled "I'm Back." After 8 months of silence, she doesn't ease into anything. She comes back swinging with a production that feels like a flex. From that moment, she begins rebuilding her brand with a new layer of confidence. More music videos, more viral skits, more shock-focused content engineered to spread across every platform. But beneath all the theatrics, there's a clear goal. Everything she posts is pushing toward one major launch: her move onto OnlyFans. The return video, the memes, the jokes, the aesthetics, all of it is marketing leading into the biggest financial chapter of her career. When Belle launches her OnlyFans in mid-2020, everything changes. She doesn't treat the platform like a side hustle or a casual photo drop. She treats it like a full-time production line. She uploads 30 to 40 photos a day along with frequent videos. No other major creator is posting at that pace. Her audience, already starved for new content after years of teasing, floods the platform. Estimates put her subscriber count at over 30,000 people, each paying $35 per month. That alone places her earnings in the range of $1 to $1.2 million every month, making her one of the highest earning creators on the entire platform almost immediately.
I'll just say it, I think we're all like the main people on OnlyFans are roughly earning the same, I think, from what I know, and at the moment it's like $1 million a month.
With the money, she buys a house, moves into a stable living situation, and begins financially supporting her mother. For the first time, she has full control over her life without relying on unreliable jobs or unstable relationships. The financial cushion also allows her to take risks, escalate her content, and shape her online identity however she wants. The The girl who spent her teenage years in survival mode now becomes one of OnlyFans' top creators, generating more money each month than most people see in a decade. But with that level of visibility comes the beginning of a slow unraveling of her mystique. Between late 2020 and early 2021, Belle starts making podcast appearances, something she had avoided for years. She shows up on H3, Cold Ones, Impulsive, Happy Hour, and the official podcast. For the first time, people hear her speak candidly, unfiltered, and at length about who she actually is.
Do it.
I heard you don't really do podcasts or interviews.
Yeah, well, I've been trying to go through them recently because I was cold turkey. I didn't do anything until recently.
She reveals that her biggest stunts were pre-planned marketing plays. The persona wasn't spontaneous chaos, it was strategy built on timing and exaggeration.
Or is it fake? It was fake.
She even drops the biggest surprise of all. She has had a long-term boyfriend throughout her entire Belle Delphine career.
Who's the partner?
Who's the guy?
It's my boyfriend.
How long has that relationship been going on for?
The whole time I've been Belle Delphine.
How long is that?
3 years.
These details dismantle the illusion her fans held onto. The enigma who seemed untouchable and unpredictable suddenly becomes human. The mysterious pink-haired entity turns out to be a regular person with a partner, a plan, and a normal life behind the scenes. The parasocial fantasies crack. The character becomes understandable, predictable, and therefore less potent. Her transparency, while honest, chips away at the myth she spent years crafting. The Belle Delphine persona thrived on secrecy, misunderstanding, and ambiguity. Once those shadows were gone, she could no longer generate the same fascination she once controlled so effortlessly. In late 2020, Belle begins teasing something people had been speculating about for years. She hints that she's finally going to cross the final boundary and create fully explicit content. The timing is deliberate. At this point, she has already re-established herself after her 2019 disappearance, built a massive subscriber base on OnlyFans, and regained her relevance with meme-heavy music videos. The announcement alone creates a digital earthquake.
Belle,
What'd you say just then?
Let's talk about that for a sec. This is making big news right now, and I think you've talked about it on other podcasts. You have your first ever, is it a true boy-girl scene coming out?
Yeah, boy-girl.
This is internet.
When?
Yeah, when does it come out?
25th of December, Christmas, baby.
What a Christmas gift.
Okay.
In November 2020, she starts dropping cryptic posts, podcast hints, and teaser images implying that the explicit jump is coming. Some fans are ecstatic, some furious, and others skeptical that she'll actually go through with it. Belle, knowing her exactly how to turn anticipation into revenue, chooses Christmas Day for the release.
Right on the cusp, right? I've never shown real nudity. And then going from that to like full on, I think someone wants to see.
At midnight on December 25th, 2020, she uploads her first hardcore video. A full boy-girl scene framed with eccentric holiday theatrics and featuring a masked partner whose identity is never revealed. It is the most hyped adult content drop in internet history. Reports fly across social media claiming she earned millions instantly. Some numbers go as high as £5 million in the first 7 minutes. Others say $10 to $20 million within the first day. Regardless of which figure is accurate, everyone agrees she made more in a single release than most adult performers make across an entire career. She even floated the idea of selling the used condoms from the shoot as merchandise, a concept perfectly in line with her shock marketing brand. But the aftermath is complicated. For years, Belle had operated a system built entirely on teasing, withholding, playing with implication, and dangling the promise of more without ever crossing the line. That formula created a ravenous audience who paid precisely because of the mystery. When she finally released explicit content, that mystery dissolved. The machine she built, all tension, anticipation, and controlled denial, couldn't function once everything was out in the open. Many had warned that crossing this line would permanently break the formula. Belle later admitted that the decision took a toll on her and wasn't as empowering as the internet tried to frame it. Even inside her own family, the consequences were immediate. Her mother, who had tolerated her Patreon-era work, stopped speaking to her after the hardcore release. Belle's Christmas drop created the largest revenue spike of her career, but it also drained away the long-term intrigue that had powered her rise. Then, barely a month later, the next controversy detonates. On January 12, 2021, Belle posts a sequence of staged photos depicting a kidnapping scenario involving a van, a masked man, and a storyline widely interpreted as a non-consent fantasy. The imagery is jarring. Rope marks, distressed poses, and Belle styled in soft childlike aesthetics that amplify the discomfort. The internet erupts immediately. Critics accuse her of romanticizing assault, normalizing violent fantasies, and marketing it to a young skewing audience. Media outlets pick up the story. Many from every corner, workers, feminists, conservative pundits, even longtime fans condemn the post. Belle argues that it is consensual roleplay, that nothing harmful occurred, and that fantasies do not equal real-world endorsement. But the backlash is too large and the context too sensitive. The posts vanish. The pressure, the controversy, and the sudden collapse of public goodwill swallow her entire online presence. By February 2021, she disappears again. No announcements, no explanations, just gone. After the backlash over the staged kidnapping photos, Belle slips into her second major disappearance. This absence feels different from the first. In 2019, her disappearance created a frenzy because she still carried an aura of mystery. Fans didn't know who she really was, how she operated, or what she would do next. The unknown made her absence powerful. But by early 2021, she had already done something she never did before. She explained herself. She appeared on podcasts, broke character, revealed her partner, her upbringing, her marketing strategy, even her creative process. Once the mystique cracked, the speculation economy around her collapsed. Search interest plummeted through 2021. YouTubers who built huge views analyzing her first disappearance now struggled to break even a fraction of those numbers. People weren't obsessed anymore because there was nothing left to uncover. The character was demystified, and the disappearance felt like a predictable retreat after controversy. The internet moved on faster than anyone expected. Then, in 2022, she makes a light re-entry. On April 18th, she tweets, "Time flies when you're rich," a blunt acknowledgement of what her sudden exit had really been. A walkaway made possible by financial security. In May, she begins teasing a return to her subscription content. In June, she starts collaborating again, appearing with creators like Tasia, Tad, Oliver Tree, and Finster, a lineup mixing cosplay influencers and comedy personalities. These appearances are shorter, less theatrical, less culturally explosive. They get attention, but nothing close to the riots of virality she used to generate. Toward the end of 2022, she briefly reappears on TikTok with short bursts of activity. They gain traction mostly because of nostalgia, not shock factor. The old spell is weaker. In May 2023, she releases a threesome scene with Mia Malkova, one of the biggest names in adult entertainment. Her partner remains unmasked, preserving the boundary she always controlled tightly. The scene gets attention on industry sites and adult forums, but barely dents mainstream conversation. Years earlier, this would have split the internet in half. Now it registers as a blip. By 2024, Belle leans more into experimental and novelty-driven projects. She sells a life-size Belle Delphine doll, shipped inside a pink coffin with a pair of her underwear included. It is designed to be a spiritual successor to the bathwater stunt. Unsettling, playful, and absurd. She also keeps floating ideas like gamer girl-themed novelty items and intimacy-oriented merch, but the world isn't reacting the way it used to. The shock value is gone, the audience is scattered, and the cultural moment that once lifted her into global notoriety has long passed. Her post-peak stunts land softly. Engagement is nowhere near her 2019 to 2020 peak. The girl who once bent the entire internet around her now feels like a ghost walking through the remnants of her old empire. Still wealthy, still visible, but no longer capable of detonating the timeline on command. Belle Delphine became a Rorschach test. People saw in her whatever confirmed their worldview: empowerment or exploitation, brilliance or immaturity, manipulation or mastery. And as the debate swirled, Belle withdrew further, letting the world argue about a character she had already begun leaving behind.
Very, switch and flip. I'll do something hardcore for a year and then my interest will just change or something.
As the years passed and the stunts lost their impact, Belle became increasingly candid about how she viewed her own digital legacy. In her later interviews, she admitted that if she could push a button and erase her entire online history, she would do it without hesitation. She described it as wanting to die on the internet. Not in a dramatic sense, but in the quiet desire to disappear from a world that never forgets. From someone who built an empire on visibility, she now felt strangled by the permanence of it. The persona that once brought her money and independence was also something she no longer wanted to be chained to. She spoke about wanting a slower, quieter life, a home far from the noise, a farm, a husband, children who would never have to grow up in the shadow of her past. She was blunt about it. She would never want her future children anywhere near the line of work that made her famous. Not because she judged others for it, but because she knew firsthand how dangerous and emotionally corrosive hypervisibility can become, especially for young women.
I think there will come a time, where I will just do everything and then I think I'll leave.
The internet's mystery, she realized, wasn't designed to let people evolve. It locks you into a moment and plays it forever. The regret didn't come from shame, it came from wanting the freedom to be someone new without the ghost of Belle Delphine following her into every future chapter of her life. By the time she drifted towards silence again, her presence had already thinned out. Her last significant public trace lands on May 29, 2024. A handful of posts, nothing culturally moving, nothing resembling the chaos she once commanded. She simply stopped feeding the machine. And with no grand finale, no scandal, no explosive exit, the internet slowly stopped looking for one. The most talked about e-girl in the world faded into quiet, leaving behind a strange, messy, unforgettable digital myth and a young woman who finally stepped out of it.